Oh, Lord baby Jesus, sitting in her little crib eating away on her leftover hash browns from Sunday service on 5th Avenue. Right now is the time of giving, so I'm giving you Atraxa's deck tech. Let go your chibble and come here for the facts, folks. She came, she saw, she conquered our hearts with her 4/4 flying vigilance death touch lifelink. At the beginning of your end step, proliferate. A time of giving, and giving is what Atraxa does. She gives counters to everything and everybody. Don't matter the color, don't matter the card type. She gives to everyone because that's what the Lord wants.
I think we're gonna be friends.
Special friends.
First, we're gonna look at counters and proliferating. Then we're gonna dive in our Planeswalker strategy. After that, we're gonna slide into Infect because f*** you. And then how to end the game with a bang. Now, a little disclaimer. Just remember that this is my opinion and I did not get this from the Bible.
That's my opinion!
So starting off with the +1/+1 gameplay, you know what happens when you're ancient? You're forgotten. Forgotten Ancient is a 4-mana 0/3. Whenever a player casts a spell, you may put a +1/+1 counter on Forgotten Ancient. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may move any number of +1/+1 counters from Forgotten Ancient onto other creatures. Jupiter Border Power Ranger is a 5-mana 2/4. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on that creature and a +1/+1 counter on Juniper Order Ranger. And Master Biomancer, a 4-mana 2/4. Each other creature you control enters the battlefield with a number of additional +1/+1 counters on it, equal to Master Biomancer's power, and as a mutant in addition to its other types. Just solid, yeah, real solid cards that can just stick around and do the job, you know. And Atraxa's gotta proliferate all that shit, yeah, that's great. Next up, a couple of legendary creatures with the sweet legendary abilities. Chalet, Voice of Plenty, 4-mana 3/4 flying. You, planeswalkers you control, and other creatures you control have hexproof. Here to serve and protect the people. Pay 6, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. Next up, Raolesk. Hey wizards, how about we call him David, okay? 5-mana 4/5 flying trample. When David Apex Hybrid enters the battlefield, put 2 +1/+1 counters on another target creature you control. When David dies, proliferate, then proliferate again. This dude is just awesome. With a name like that, it's hard not to suck huge donkey balls.
Watch your profanity.
And last but not least, Yawgmoth Thran Pharmacist. 4-mana 2/4 protection from humans. Pay 1 life, sacrifice another creature. Put a -1/-1 counter on up to 1 target creature and draw a card. Pay 2 black, discard a card, proliferate. One of my favorite cards, period. I love the art, I love the flavor, the abilities. It's just a gorgeous, gorgeous card with a lot of history behind it. Just amazing, yeah. Now a couple of sweet tartan ass cards. Cathar's Crusade. 5-mana white enchantment. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. The Great Henge, 9-mana green legendary artifact. This spell costs X less to cast, where X is the greatest power among creatures you control. Tap to add 2 green, you gain 2 life. Whenever a non-token creature enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on it and draw a card. Right on curve for your turn 5 drop if you play Atraxa on turn 4, because the Henge is gonna cost you 5 mana now. Boy! And Sword of Truth and Justice, 3-mana artifact equipment. Equipped creature get +2/+2 and has protection from white and from blue. Whenever equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, put a +1/+1 counter on a creature you control, then proliferate. Hey, not only does she get thick boy with the +2/+2, but she adds counters and she proliferates. Next up, Gave Guru of Spores. 5-mana 0/0, Gave Guru of Spores enters the battlefield with 5 +1/+1 counters on it. Pay 1, remove a +1/+1 counter from a creature you control, create a 1/1 green Saproling creature token. Pay 1, sacrifice a creature, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. This card gave me chills the first time I saw it. Peer, Little Rascal. 3-mana 1/1, partner with Toothy, imaginary friend. If 1 or more counters would be put on a permanent your team controls, that many +1 of each of those counters are put on that permanent instead. And Corpse Jack Menace. 4-mana 4/4. If 1 or more +1/+1 counters would be put on a creature you control, twice that many +1/+1 counters are put on it instead.
Ouch!
Big boy cards for epic gamers like you. Next up, we got Heart and Scale, 1-mana green enchantment. If 1 or more +1/+1 counters would be put on a creature you control, that many +1/+1 counters are put on it instead. Can we get 1 counter? No, can we get 2 counters? Inexorable Tide is a 5-mana blue enchantment. Whenever you cast a spell, proliferate. We got 1 proliferate. No wait, we got 2 2 Proliferates. And Contagion Engine, 6 mana artifact. When Contagion Engine enters the battlefield, put a -1/-1 counter on each creature target player controls. Pay 4 and tap, proliferate, then proliferate again. More proliferate. Can we get more proliferate? Call right now for proliferating. Next up, some baby board wipes. Dune Blast, 7 mana sorcery, choose up to 1 creature, destroy the rest.
Hey boss.
I'll let you choose which creature you should choose with this card. Here's a hint, it starts with Atraxa. And Urza's Ruinous Blast, 5 mana legendary sorcery, exile all non-land permanents that aren't legendary, exiling all but Atraxa and your planeswalkers.
Yoo-hoo, kids.
Y'all clean your dishes and had enough sody pops? Here's the dessert, your planeswalkers. Liliana Dreadhorde General, 6 mana, comes in with 6 loyalty counters on it. Whenever a creature you control dies, draw a card. +1, create a 2/2 black zombie creature token. -4, each player sacrifices 2 creatures. -9, each player chooses a permanent they control of each permanent type and sacrifices the rest. Protection and card advantage. Up Nixilis, 5 mana, comes in with 5 loyalty counters. +1, you draw a card and you lose 1 life. -3, destroy target creature. -8, target opponent gets an emblem with whenever a player draws a card, you lose 2 life. Protection and card advantage. And Garruk Cursed Huntsman, 6 mana, comes in with 5 loyalty counters. Create 2/2 black and green wolf creature tokens with when this creature dies, put a loyalty counter on each Garruk you control. -3, destroy target creature, draw a card. -6, you get an emblem with creatures you control get +3/+3 and have trample. Starting to see a little pattern here, kids? Now the Wanderer.
Who are you?
Great against those pesky burn spells. 4 mana, comes into play with 5 loyalty counters. Prevent all non-combat damage that would be dealt to you and other permanents you control. -2, exile target creature with power 4 or greater. Jace, Unraveler of Secrets. If you got a secret, you better not tell Jace.
I'll tell you a secret.
5 mana, comes into play with 5 loyalty counters. +1, scry 1, then draw a card. -2, return target creature to its owner's hand. -8, you get an emblem with whenever an opponent casts his or her first spell each turn, counter that spell. Wow, that looks fun. Antiphary, Hero of Pizza, 5 mana, comes into play with 4 loyalty counters. +1, draw a card at the beginning of the next end step, untap 2 lands. -3, put target permanent on top of its owner's library, third from the top. And -8, you get an emblem with whenever you draw a card, exile target permanent an opponent controls. Most annoying dude ever, but we love him anyways. Next up, Tamiyo the Moon Sage. 5 mana, comes into play with 4 loyalty counters. +1, tap target permanent. It doesn't untap during its controller's next untap step. -2, draw a card for each tap creature target player controls. -8, watch this. You get an emblem with you have no maximum hand size, and whenever a card is put into your graveyard from anywhere, you may return it to your hand.
Wow.
One of my favorite blue planeswalkers. All her abilities are really good and her ult is just like
Wow.
Next up, Eugen the Sprite Dragon. 8 mana, comes into play with 7 loyalty counters. +2, Eugen the Sprite Dragon deals 3 damage to target creature or player. -X, exile each permanent with converted mana cost X or less that's 1 or more colors. -10, you gain 7 life, draw 7 cards, then put up to 7 permanent cards from your hand onto the battlefield. Removal on a stick. And Thick Boy Karn Liberated. 7 mana, comes into play with 6 loyalty counters. +4, target player exiles a card from his or her hand. -3, exile target permanent. And -14, I just hope we never get there because it doesn't look fun.
I can't believe you've done this.
Next up, bro, another Jace, bro. Another Tamiyo and another Teferi, bro. Dude, Belleran. +2, each player draws a card, bro. -1, target player draws a card, bro. -10, target player puts the top 20 cards of his or her library into his or her graveyard. Like, dude, great draw engine, bro. Tamiyo, Field Researcher. Just like researching what, man? Like, be precise. 4 mana, comes into play with 4 loyalty counters. +1, choose up to 2 target creatures until your next turn. Whenever either of those creatures deals combat damage, you draw a card. -2, tap up to 2 target non-land permanents. They don't untap during their controller's next untap step. And -7, draw 3 cards. You get an emblem with you may cast non-land cards from your hand without paying their mana cost. One of my favorite walkers on this list, dude. All 3 abilities, pretty gnarly, dude.
Excited.
And Teferi, Temporal Archmage. 6 mana, comes into play with 5 loyalty counters. +1, look at the top 2 cards of your library. Put one of them in your hand and the other on the bottom of your library. -1, untap up to 4 target permanents. And -10, you get an emblem with you may activate loyalty abilities of planeswalkers you control on any player's turn. Anytime you could cast an instant. Oh boy, if you can ult this dude, you won't be making any friends, bro. Now you thought you had no friends? Wait till you play these cards, buddy.
Wait a planet.
Here's a bit of Infect for you guys. Phyrexian Crusader, 3 mana, 2/2, first strike, protection from red and from white. Infect. Ah, this card brings back memories. Viral Drake, 4 mana, 1/4, flying. Infect. Pay 4, Proliferate. A flying infect creature that proliferates. I mean, come on. And finally, the cream of the crop, Icarats. 3 mana, 2/1 infect. When Icarats enters the battlefield, each player gets a poison counter. This is the guy you want on your team. The second he hits the board, boom, everybody gets infect counters. Then start proliferating. Next up, Skittles the Bright Dragon. 5 mana, 4/4, flying infect. Pay 1, he gains haste. Pay 2, regenerate him. I mean, come on, like this guy's coronavirus on a stick. If you're not playing this in an infect deck, you should go back to playing Pokio or Yugi-Man. I mean, come on. Next up, some cheeky cards. Tainted Strike. Target creature gets +1/+0 and gain infect until end of turn. Pretty good in any deck, to be honest. 1 black mana and instant speed. Inkmoth Nexus. Tap for a colorless, pay 1. Inkmoth Nexus becomes a 1/1 Blink Moth artifact creature with flying and infect until end of turn. One, if not my favorite land of all time. Such an iconic card. When I think of infect, I think of this card. And Triumph of the Hordes, 4 mana green sorcery. Until end of turn, creatures you control get +1/+1 and gain trample and infect, giving all your creatures COVID-19 and trample. Ay ay ay. Now for your win cons. Plane-wide Celebration. 7 mana green sorcery. Choose 4. You may choose the same mode more than once. Create a 2/2 citizen creature token that's all colors. Return target permanent card from your graveyard to your hand. Proliferate or you gain 4 life. Proliferating 4 times in a row is what we're looking for, kids. Gaining life. Next up, Primeval's Glorious Rebirth. 7 mana legendary sorcery. Return all legendary permanent cards from your graveyard to the battlefield. Playing all your walkers and letting them die because you're gonna bring them back at the end of the game with this, bro? That's so metal, dude.
So good!
But our 2 best cards to finish up the games are Doubling Season and Deep Glow Skate. Doubling Season is a 5 mana enchantment. If an effect would create 1 or more tokens under your control, it creates twice that many tokens instead. If an effect would put 1 or more counters on a permanent you control, it puts twice that many of those counters on that permanent instead. A real big classic, but to be honest, Deep Glow Skate, 5 mana 3/3. When Tony Hawk Pro Skater enters the battlefield, double the number of each kind of counters on any number of target permanents. I know Mama said Doubling Season was so good, but I actually prefer the blue fishy here. The thing with Doubling Season is that it has to be on the battlefield before you play your planeswalkers, so people kind of see what's coming. With the fish, you can have all your walkers on the porch just drinking coffee and reading the newspaper while quarantine minding their own beeswax. Then boom, fish hits the field and the shit hits the fans. Double on counters and go crazy.
Nice.
Now here are the planeswalkers you want to alt. Once again, this is just my opinion, but these are pretty good. The best, I think, is Liliana Dreadhorde General. -9, each opponent chooses a permanent they control of each permanent type and sacrifices the rest. So what I'm reading is, each opponent chooses a land they control and sacrifices the rest. Good luck losing after that. Next up, Tamiyo the Moon Sage. -8, you get an emblem with you have no maximum hand size, and whenever a card is put into your graveyard from anywhere, you may return it to your hand. So pair this up with any extra turn card for infinite turns.
Can everyone say hi to my friend?
But I actually love Savor the Moment in this deck. 3 mana blue sorcery, take an extra turn after this one, skip the untap step of that turn.
Skip the untap step, but that doesn't seem too good.
Who cares? Atraxa has Vigilance, so you can attack forever, and you can still activate all your planeswalkers, so who needs to untap? And last but not least, another Tamiyo, Field Researcher. -7, draw 3 cards, you get an emblem with you may cast non-land cards from your hand without paying their mana cost. So technically, -7 you have Omniscience forever. Have fun after that. But who needs all those fancy win cons when you can just... never mind.